In today's video, we're going to be going over 10 mistakes that slip through editing in the Marvel films. Everybody knows that the Marvel Universe is sprawling with information. We get full backstories to do with the characters, and there are long, complicated plots as well. Because of this, there have been a few errors that have slipped past the people that were in charge of the movies. Some of these mistakes were spotted by eagle-eyed fans, and so today, we're going to be going over 10 of them. Number 1. So, the first error we have isn't actually from a movie, but it's to do with the Avengers Endgame poster. While fans were anxiously awaiting for any information there was to do with Endgame, Marvel released a poster. But fans were enraged, and rightfully so. The cast of Endgame is humongous, but Marvel managed to fit 13 characters onto the front of the poster. The only thing is, though, they only put 12 names on it, with Danai Gurira's name being the missing one. She played as Okoye, and many fans were very disappointed in Marvel for leaving her name from the poster completely, even though she was on the poster. Marvel was quick to fix their error, though, and they released a new poster, tweeting it out on Twitter and tagging Gurira in the post with the hashtag Wakanda Forever. Number 2. The next error that was made by Marvel that we have for you today was within Spider-Man Homecoming. Initially, this film was set to take place 8 years after the events of The Avengers. However, when Marvel released the timeline for all of its movies to date, it confirmed that Spider-Man Homecoming took place in 2016. This was only 4 years after 2012's The Avengers. So everything in Homecoming that references the 8-year gap is totally incorrect, and we just have to ignore it, I guess. Number 3. The post-credits scene in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 confirmed the heartwarming theory that Stan Lee, the man behind the comics, had a part in every single one of the Marvel movies. We see Lee on another planet with the species known as the Watchers, and he is detailing the various appearances that he had in the other movies. It turns out, though, that there was an error with Lee's references. He references the time that he showed up as a FedEx man, which took place in 2016's Captain America: Civil War. However, though, the timelines don't add up, because Guardians of the Galaxy 2 took place in 2014. Number 4. In Avengers: Infinity War, Marvel confirmed the timeline of the Gauntlet. They told us that it was made by Eitri and was taken by Thanos so that he could snap and wipe out half of existence. However, though, the glove was featured in both Thor and Thor Ragnarok, as well as the post-credits scene of Avengers: Age of Ultron. This led to quite some confusion with writers Christopher Marcus and Stephen Nick because they had to clear some things up. Mark has told Collider, "I think the Gauntlet was made when Loki was pretending to be Odin. Presumably, Eitri was running a relatively regular business and people would come there for things and somebody would have said something." However, this only makes things more confusing, seeing as though Loki only turns into Odin at the end of Thor: The Dark World, which was in 2013. So the question still stands. How did the Gauntlet exist in the first Thor movie in 2011? It was confirmed to us that the Gauntlet on Asgard was fake during Thor Ragnarok, but how did the fake version of the Gauntlet that didn't exist yet come to be? It really is quite a confusing subject. Number 5. The origin behind Gamora is still quite confusing. In the Guardians of the Galaxy, she says that Thanos is not her father, and that he took her away from her homeworld and killed her parents in front of her. She then says that he turned her into a weapon and tortured her. Later on, the Nova Corpsman, Roman Day, says that Gamora is the last surviving member of her species. None of this adds up, though, with what we learned about her in Infinity War. We get a flashback where we see that Thanos takes Gamora away from her mother and that there's no father in sight, but he then distracts her while his minions are slaughtering only half of the Zeho-Barian race. So, where did the rest of her race go? If the rest of her race did end up becoming extinct at a later date, it was either because of bad luck or extreme carelessness, not because Thanos and his minions wiped them out. Number 6. During Iron Man 2, Tony Stark is called to testify before the United States Senate Armed Services Committee. Later on, he re-watches his testimony on YouTube. The weird thing about this scene is that the video is titled Stark Industries CEO Tony Stark on Capitol Hill. Seems fine, but it actually isn't. They spelled capital with an A instead of an O, so it was the wrong spelling. C-SPAN, the cable satellite public affairs network, really should have known the correct spelling for Capitol Hill, seeing as though it's where their headquarters are based. Number 7. During Captain America: The Winter Soldier, Steve Rogers visits an exhibition in a museum that is dedicated to his whole life. The museum includes an entry of James Buchanan Barnes, otherwise known as Bucky, who is now the Winter Soldier. But there's something wrong with it. The text begins by saying, born in 1916, Barnes grew up the oldest child of 4. But then the text concludes by listing the dates of his life as 1917 through 1944. So there's a bit of an error there. Was he born in 1916 or 1917? Number 8. During the Ant-Man movie, Marvel Studios did their best to try to apply real science to powers. Maybe they should have kept it vague because there were some things that went very wrong. It's explained to us twice within the film that Hank's particles work by shrinking the space between the atoms, not affecting the atoms themselves. This means that growing or shrinking something will not affect its weight. Hank couldn't carry a giant tank in his pocket. Thomas the Tank Engine would have destroyed half the house and the police car as well, but most importantly, one would not be able to go subatomic, because you can't shrink the space between atoms to make them smaller than atoms. It just doesn't make any sense. So either Hank did not know how his own invention worked at all, or the science in the movies doesn't make any sense. Number 9. When Natasha was introduced into the Avengers, writer-director Joss Whedon had to do his best of making her appear like a badass. After all, she was a non-powered human being that the audience was supposed to believe was capable of fighting alongside a genetically enhanced super soldier, a big strong green monster, and the literal god of thunder. So, when she was first introduced, we saw her being held up by 4 gangsters who had tied her to a chair. We see her swing her head back and forth as if she's meaning to headbutt one of the guys, but then we see her hair slightly brush one of them, and he goes flying as if she just knocked him out cold. It makes it look as if this gangster was knocked out by her hair. Obviously, this wasn't supposed to be the case, and it was probably down to the stuntman standing too far away, and it made it into the final cut without being noticed. Number 10. Marvel Studios wanted us to believe that they had everything planned out for the universe from 2008 when Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk came out back to back. However though, there is one problem because some stuff doesn't quite line up. In the post-credits of The Incredible Hulk, Tony Stark shows up in a bar where General Ross is drinking his sorrows away because Banner escaped him yet again. Stark says to General Ross, "We're putting together a team." As viewers, we think that this is the Avengers that he's referring to. But in Iron Man 2, which takes place during the events of The Incredible Hulk, S.H.I.E.L.D. wanted nothing to do with Tony because he was apparently a liability. S.H.I.E.L.D. are the ones who put the Avengers together, so this whole thing makes no sense. Was Stark recruiting the Avengers on his own? I don't really know with this one. That's all for today though. What'd you think of the list? Let us know in the comments what you thought. But with that being said, this is the end of the video, so we'll see you in the next one.